Step back now. I'm treating a patient. Hands behind your back.
This is an emergency.
Turn around.
You're making a mistake.
Before this night ends, this officer will lose his badge. Before the paperwork dries, his name will be attached to a settlement worth $5.5 million. And the moment that guarantees it is already unfolding. He doesn't know it yet. That's the danger, because arrogance never announces itself as a career-ending decision. It arrives disguised as confidence, as authority, as certainty. And tonight, inside a crowded emergency room, that certainty is about to collide with something it cannot dominate. A doctor. Not a suspect, not a threat, not someone who can be bullied into compliance without consequence. The officer enters with momentum, the kind built from years of being obeyed without question. His posture is squared, his voice clipped. He's used to rooms bending around him, used to people lowering their tone when he speaks. But the ER doesn't respond that way. This is a space governed by urgency, not ego, by triage, not command, by seconds, not statutes. And the man standing in scrubs doesn't flinch when authority walks in. That lack of fear is the first insult. The doctor's voice stays level, calm, measured. It isn't defiant, it's immovable. He doesn't raise it to match the officer's tone. He doesn't need to. His power doesn't come from volume. That's when the officer's jaw tightens, because for officers like this, calm isn't neutrality, it's insolence. This is the first dangerous moment, not because of what's said, but because of what isn't. No de-escalation, no pause, no recalibration. The officer doesn't ask why the doctor is standing his ground. He interprets resistance as disrespect. And disrespect to an unchecked ego is a challenge that must be crushed. Step back. The command is reflexive, automatic. It's the phrase that's worked 1,000 times before. But the doctor doesn't step back. He steps deeper into his role, toward his patient, toward the responsibility he cannot abandon. I'm treating a patient. This is where careers begin to crack, because the officer hears that sentence as an excuse, not an obligation. He hears defiance, not duty. And instead of recognizing competing authority, he doubles down on his own. This is the anatomy of the mistake. The officer believes the badge overrides context, overrides profession, overrides ethics. He believes compliance is universal, that it exists independent of circumstance. But the law doesn't work that way, and neither does public perception. Every second this standoff continues, invisible witnesses are being created. Nurses, patients, family members, people who don't see a cop enforcing order. They see a man interrupting care. And the officer doesn't see any of them. He's locked on to the doctor. The doctor, meanwhile, is doing something far more dangerous than shouting. He's staying dignified. Dignity is destabilizing to bullies. It refuses to feed the confrontation. It exposes aggression by contrast. The doctor's calm becomes a mirror, and the officer doesn't like what it reflects. You don't tell me what to do. That sentence is pure ego, not law, not policy, ego. This is the moment the audience needs to understand why this is dangerous, because the officer has shifted from enforcing rules to enforcing dominance, and dominance has no legal defense. The doctor doesn't posture, he doesn't threaten, he simply states a boundary grounded in responsibility. You don't outrank medicine. It lands like a slap because it's true, and truth is intolerable when power is being questioned. The officer's hand moves, not to assess, not to communicate, but to control. His voice hardens, the temperature drops. Turn around. This is the pivot point, the irreversible one. Up until now, this could still be salvaged, a supervisor call, a pause, a conversation, but the command to arrest inside an ER during active patient care transforms a misunderstanding into a spectacle. This is where the settlement starts accruing interest. The doctor says it again, calmly, almost regretfully. This is an emergency. That sentence will be replayed in court, in depositions, in closing arguments. It will be slowed down, transcribed, dissected, and every time it's heard, it will sound reasonable. That's why this moment is lethal to the officer's career, because juries don't punish mistakes, they punish arrogance. And this arrest doesn't look like confusion, it looks like punishment for defiance. The officer doesn't see a physician bound by oath, he sees a civilian who refused to submit. And submission is the one thing his ego cannot let go. Hands behind your back. Around them, the ER feels it, the shift. The nurses freeze, the room tightens. This isn't procedure anymore, it's domination performed in public. The doctor doesn't resist. That's the final twist of the knife. No struggle, no raised voice, just compliance wrapped in disbelief. You're making a mistake. It's not a threat, it's a warning, the kind that comes right before consequences unfold. The cuffs click, metal against skin, authority asserting itself where it never belonged. And somewhere off frame, the most dangerous sound for any officer begins to crackle through the radio. A supervisor is being notified, and this story is about to explode. The radio doesn't raise its voice, it doesn't have to. A brief chirp, a coded tone, the kind that signals attention without drama, and yet for the officer, it lands heavier than any shout ever could. Because supervisors don't get called when things are going well. The officer hears it, but he doesn't acknowledge it yet. He's still riding the momentum of control, still convinced that backing down would be weakness. And weakness to a man like this feels fatal, so he tightens his grip instead. The doctor is now cuffed, hands behind his back, his shoulders pulled slightly inward, not from fear, but from restraint. He doesn't plead, he doesn't beg. He turns his head just enough to make eye contact. Not angry, not panicked, unshakable. That look is the second danger, because it communicates something the officer doesn't understand until it's too late. This isn't ending here. Around them, the ER begins to shift from shock to recognition. Nurses exchange looks. Someone steps back to get a clearer view, not to intervene, but to remember. Phones aren't raised yet, but memories are being recorded with precision. This is no longer an isolated decision. It's becoming a narrative. The officer gives orders into the room like he's still in control of it. Clear the area, move back. He's performing authority now, not exercising it. The difference matters. The doctor speaks again, his voice still measured despite the cuffs biting into his wrists. This is an emergency. That sentence will be simple. It carries enormous weight. This is why this moment is catastrophic for the officer's career, because harm no longer needs to be proven. Risk is enough. The mere interruption of emergency care reframes everything. What began as an ego clash has crossed into potential liability. The officer doesn't respond to the words, he responds to the implication that he might be wrong. His jaw sets, his eyes harden. He pivots the doctor away from the bed, away from the patient, and in so doing, seals the narrative permanently. This isn't about safety anymore. It's about punishment. A nurse finally speaks up, carefully, professionally. She chooses her words like they're glass. He's the attending physician. The officer doesn't look at her, because acknowledging her would mean acknowledging the hierarchy he just violated. Another voice follows, louder this time, a family member, confused, alarmed. What's happening? The officer snaps an answer without context, disorderly, non-compliant, standard language, the kind that sounds hollow outside a patrol car. And here's the danger the officer can't see. Every justification he offers sounds weaker than the silence he could have chosen instead. The doctor says nothing now. That silence is devastating because it forces everyone else to fill it in, and they don't fill it in kindly. The radio chirps again. This time the officer answers.
His tone changes instantly, sharper, straighter, respectful. That single shift will be dissected later because it reveals something critical. The officer can modulate his behavior. He just chose not to, until someone above him entered the picture.
He gives a clipped summary, leaves out tone, leaves out context, leaves out the patient. He frames it as resistance, not interference. But the room tells a different story. By the time the supervisor arrives, the air is heavy with it. The kind of tension that doesn't dissipate, it settles. The kind that lingers in corners and attaches itself to reputations. The supervisor doesn't rush, he observes. That pause is deadly. He sees the cuffs, the scrubs, the bed behind them, and in that instant, the equation changes. This is why supervisors are dangerous to unchecked officers. They don't see through ego, they see through risk. The doctor finally speaks, not emotionally, but clinically. My patient is unattended. That's it. No accusations, no insults, just a statement of fact. And facts are ruthless. The supervisor asks a question the officer wasn't prepared for. Why is he cuffed? The officer answers quickly, too quickly. His words stack on top of each other, justification piled on justification. He cites authority, he cites compliance, he cites tone. He doesn't cite necessity. That omission is everything, because necessity is the only defense that matters now. The supervisor looks around again, takes in the witnesses, the patient, the staff frozen in professional restraint. And then he does something subtle, something that will echo all the way to the courthouse. He asks the doctor directly, "Can you resume care if these come off?" The officer stiffens. That question doesn't just challenge his decision, it exposes it. It reframes the arrest not as enforcement, but as obstruction. "Yes," the doctor replies immediately. No hesitation, no caveat. The supervisor nods, and with that nod, the officer feels it too, the ground shifting beneath him. This is the final dangerous moment of part 2, the realization that control has changed hands, quietly, irreversibly. Because from this point forward, the story no longer belongs to the officer, it belongs to internal affairs, to hospital administrators, to attorneys who specialize in turning arrogance into exhibits. The cuffs are about to come off, but the consequences are just beginning, and the officer doesn't know yet that the most expensive seconds of his career are already behind him. The cuffs come off quietly, no announcement, no apology, just metal loosening from wrists that never should have been bound. The doctor doesn't rub the marks. He doesn't look at the officer. He turns immediately back to the bed, back to the patient, as if the interruption were nothing more than a malfunctioning alarm. That decision is surgical because it denies the officer the one thing he's still clinging to, relevance. This is where the officer's career truly begins to bleed, not in confrontation, but in erasure. The supervisor steps aside with him. Voices drop. Body language changes. The officer stands straighter now, suddenly aware of posture, of optics, of the eyes still fixed on him from every corner of the ER. This is the danger of late awareness. It arrives when damage is already permanent. The supervisor asks questions that don't sound accusatory, but feel forensic. Did you identify him? Did you confirm his role? Did you consider the patient? Each one lands with increasing weight, because the answers don't align. The officer responds defensively at first, explains tone, mentions non-compliance, leans again on authority. But authority sounds thin in a hospital, especially when contrasted with a man saving a life 10 feet away. The supervisor doesn't argue, he listens. That silence is devastating, because it tells the officer something he hasn't processed yet. This incident is already being written down, and not by him. Across the room, the doctor works with precision. Commands are issued, tools are passed, care resumes as if chaos never entered. The staff follows him instinctively. That visual contrast is lethal. One man restores order by doing his job, the other disrupted it by asserting dominance. This is why this moment is career-ending, because the narrative is now visual, not verbal, and visuals don't forget. A hospital administrator arrives, then another. Their faces are composed, but their eyes are sharp. They aren't here to mediate feelings, they're here to assess risk, liability, optics, words that don't appear in police reports but destroy careers nonetheless. The officer is asked to step outside. That request isn't loud, it's polite, and it carries more authority than any command he issued all night. In the hallway, the air feels colder, quieter, the kind of quiet where reality sets in. The supervisor finally speaks plainly. This didn't need to happen. That sentence will echo, because it strips away justification. It reframes the entire encounter as optional, avoidable, unnecessary. The officer nods, says nothing. For the first time tonight, his silence isn't strategic, it's hollow. Inside the ER, statements are already being formed, timelines reconstructed, who said what, who saw what, who will remember what tone was used. And here's the truth the officer doesn't grasp yet. Everyone remembers tone, especially when it's wrong. By morning, the department will have calls waiting, media inquiries phrased politely but pointedly, hospital lawyers requesting footage, administrators demanding explanations. The body cam will be reviewed, not for what it shows, but for what it reveals. The impatience, the escalation, the moment authority became personal. And the doctor's calm, frame after frame, will become the silent prosecutor. Days later, the officer will be placed on leave, administrative at first, temporary, they'll say, routine. He'll tell himself it's procedure, that it'll blow over, that the department will stand by him. That belief is the final illusion, because departments don't defend arrogance when it's expensive. Internal affairs will slow everything down. Emails will surface, training manuals will be quoted, policies about medical facilities, professional discretion, and exigent circumstances will suddenly matter a great deal. And the question will be simple: why didn't you step back? There will be no good answer. Months later, the settlement will come quietly. No admission of wrongdoing, just numbers, carefully negotiated, carefully devastating. $5.5 million, a number large enough to signal fault without ever saying the word. The officer will no longer be on the force by then. Official reasons will vary, language will be softened, but the truth will be understood by everyone who reads between the lines. This wasn't about procedure, it was about ego. And ego, when given authority and denied restraint, doesn't just make mistakes, it leaves evidence. The doctor will keep practicing, his reputation intact, enhanced even. A man who kept his dignity under cuffs, a professional who didn't flinch when power tried to humiliate him. The officer will be remembered differently, as a cautionary tale, as a training scenario, as the moment someone forgot that authority has limits. And the most brutal part? All of it could have been avoided with a single step back.